Hello and welcome to Salina A&E. I'm your host, David Hawksworth, and I'm here with Crystal Hammerschmidt, who's the Art Services Coordinator for the city. Crystal, welcome.
Thanks for being here.
We're at Oxbow Park today, talking about the Community Art and Design Program, and we have a great example of art and design, community art and design right here.
We absolutely do. I'd like to tell you a little bit about this piece that's behind us. This is our newest acquisition for the public collection. So we work every year, and this would be, we are actually in the 14th year of Sculpture Tour, as you know, that's a resource partnership that we've managed to. But each year, the People's Choice that's chosen by our community gets purchased by the city. So Jody Bliss's piece right behind us is the newest acquisition, and we're here in Oxbow Park. And I'm really excited that it's here. We've got a really good response from the community, but the CAD program that we're talking about today was instrumental in making the decision to get this piece placed in this location.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece and it's very intricate, so it's a really great addition to the park. So, but the Community Art and Design Program has been around for quite a while. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how that came to be?
Yeah, so you know, the Arts and Humanities was founded in 1966, and over the years, thinking about Salina's, you know, we've had a really rich cultural and creative community, but I think there was an understanding that the outward appearance of sort of that vibrancy was not matching like what was really existing. And then in 2000, it was a resolution to form the CAD committee. So supporting and kind of really officiating a city policy on how to manage to public art. And that has grown over time. And certainly I see that growing and the ways that we're addressing public art and how our collection is growing over time.
Okay, right. There's just art all over town. I mean, there's no denying that it's all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really beautifies the community. Can you tell us a few examples of what we see in the community that's a result of the Community Art and Design Program?
Yeah, I think maybe generally when we think about art, we think about paintings, and certainly we see murals across the city in different scales, some international artists to local artists, and that's very clear. But some of the things that maybe we don't think about are some of these big capital improvement projects. And that's when the city is building a new facility, and it may have a space that's available to integrate art and design. And that's part of this CAD policy of being able to engage professional artists to enhance the look of our community and the buildings. And it's not just an aesthetic or just pure beautification. Oftentimes, these art integration projects are taking something that's a need that exists. So a great example of that is at the Field House downtown, where you see those like really intricate like metal screens out front of the building. So those were a part of a major CIP process, a collaboration with an artist and a manufacturer, and the whole point of those was to screen off that front lobby. Mm-hmm. So it was a way we have a policy that engages those artists and how we go through that. Engaging a site committee, people from the community to talk about what's the need and what's really practical, and certainly that goes through processes, reviews, and to the city commission. But that's such a unique example of what public art is because it serves a function. Without that there, they would have had to install blinds or something else that maybe were more traditional when it comes to architecture or taking care of design. But our city policy opened that up for something creative in that space to resolve an absolutely functional need.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great example. The one that I always think of is the animal shelter with the kind of the tree.
Absolutely, the carved brick on the animal shelter.
You.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another example of a major CIP project, so capital improvement projects. That's interesting where I didn't get to see that happen myself. It preceded me, but the process was really cool to decide what worked in integrating that and the thought of these trees, and it's a welcoming space. But those bricks got carved in an artist's studio and fired and then integrated. So that there's a process where the arts and humanities and the planning and architects are in conversation from the very beginning of things, because you can't just kind of tack on a brick mural at the end of things. You really have to think about what works and the timing of everything. So there's a lot of people who are involved in managing public art, and I'm lucky to get to manage that with the arts and humanities. But we have so many departments, and it's also a huge collaboration a lot of the time between like our city, public funding, and private funding. So our I would say the city of Salina is really unique in how we get things done, because the city isn't able to do all of these things, but the CAD committee certainly is there to support. One of the projects that has been going on here just in the last about year and a half are the trash corrals downtown, as a resource partner with Salina Downtown Incorporated. So the CAD committee has served as a recommending body and a reviewing group of those applications. So that supports SDI by having a group of community members to look at that and say, are these appropriate for our community? We have questions. So we get feedback before just pushing these projects through. So that's a big part of what CAD is doing, is thinking about the community, thinking about where art could be placed. And again, this piece behind us was a great example of sort of the priorities and thinking about what communities are missing a piece of artwork, or how can we engage people with art. That's an arts and humanities thing. We're always thinking about how we can engage people differently, but this was a new space to bring a piece of our collection, and I think CAD was really happy with the response and that work that we were able to do.
Yeah, exactly. I think another area where art is kind of obvious is, I always think of South 9th Street, around where Lowe's is, I guess south of Schilling. That was a community art and design project too, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that was another capital improvement project. And that one is different because it wasn't necessarily a facility, so there was space that was being redone. And so although that project precedes me, that's a major infrastructure project. So I can't speak to the specifics of it, but it still went through that same sort of artist call, working with the CAD committee, and all of those major CIP projects, there's a site committee established. So we always have the CAD committee who meets monthly, and it continues the work that they're doing on an annual basis. But when we have these big projects come up, we establish a specific site committee. So we're talking about the neighbors, either any of the city offices or departments that are going to be involved in the care and maintenance. So if that's the streets and engineering that we're thinking about, you put a giant piece like that in, you may have water mains, you may have to like redo streets and curbs. So projects like that touch so many departments, and sometimes people it can be a slower process, but there's a lot to take into consideration because those are major build processes.
Right.
It's not just a painting on a wall, and sculptures are major builds too. But when you start like putting something in the middle of the street and you've got lighting and then the care and maintenance of those really large pieces. So that's something that CAD's been talking about, that they want to consider that. We have this amazing collection and it continues to grow, but how do we take care of that? So that's certainly been work that CAD has focused on in the last year. Going through, doing evaluations, those committee members have started to act as stewards to the public collection, which is really fantastic. So they're going out, they're taking the photos, recording to make sure we have proper signage, if we have any damage, and where can we fix that? Because we do have budget to maintain that, but that's always part of the conversation as we move into accepting new artworks and building this collection. Just like taking care of streets or anything else, it requires upkeep and maintenance.
Yeah,
So,
that's something that I never really thought about until I was
I
talking
probably
to
didn't
you
think
about
it too, yeah, until doing this work. So it is, and some of those capital improvement projects, Kenwood Cove, that's a really good example of another art integration project. So, putting in a new pool, and taking that opportunity to work with an artist to design something that's very specific to space. And that's every time you talk about a big public art piece, you want to think about space, and how it's going to be utilized, and is it relevant. I like to do my school presentations and ask the kids, would it make sense if we had a giraffe, floating in the back of the pool, because it's all about water, and those are the sorts of references. So it's very intentional work that's happening, but that piece takes a lot of care and maintenance. I wish I could tell you how many thousands of tiny little mosaic pieces are on the back of that.
And half of it's underwater for 3 months out of the year.
Well, I think it comes up to the bottom, but there's water that flows over the top of it.
Okay.
So over the last 10 years, and they've been cleaning just in this last year, but it starts to calcify. But you've got these delicate tiles with this beautiful sort of iridescent finish on the front. So not everybody in a parks department just comes into that work thinking they're going to be cleaning some delicate mosaic tiles.
Right.
So our city departments really have been great about taking on some new responsibilities that are really unique to their roles, because we have this public art collection.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, we're always thinking about art in public places, and one of the newest projects that the city is undertaking is the construction of a new firehouse.
Yeah.
On the east side of town by Markley Road, and where the Berkeley Family Recreation Area is.
Yeah.
And I know that you're involved with planning a work of art at the new firehouse.
Yeah, so that's been a really interesting project. All of these ones we've talked about have preceded me, and this fire station is one I get to work very directly on. And as I talked about the field house and addressing something that was a need, that's where that conversation has been with the fire station. Funding for public art projects is always open conversation to the public, and commission has feedback and recommendations for where we're at. The policy does allow up to 5% of that capital improvement budget. So the budget allotted for that fire station, depending on where we're at and the necessities, and where things go, up to 5%. So it's deciding what's the biggest need, and are things being cut. So there's a lot of back and forth in the recommendations, but with this station, rather than thinking about a standalone piece of artwork, and that can be part of it. You could choose to do a standalone thing that sets out front, or identify some needs. And with the fire station, that's where we're at, is screening some utilities that are maybe not aesthetically pleasing, but it's at a side of the building where the public's going to see it all the time. So how can we screen that, but also take that as an opportunity for something aesthetic, to engage an artist or a designer in that space. The identifier wall on the front, we have plenty of spaces where it says fire station number 4. But can we do something creative that personalizes that space? And also, there's a big divider of the parking lots for safety. So, these things that you could build a screen or just put in a wall, we've taken these as opportunities, and that's how these projects really come about often, is where's there an existing need that creates an opportunity for an artist or a designer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot to think about as you go forward.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's important to note that arts and humanities staff are not alone in this endeavor. You have a whole community art and design committee that works with you, and that's all citizens who volunteer their time to help out with this. So tell us about what the community art and design committee actually does, when they meet, what they talk about.
So we meet every month on the third Tuesday, except for December and June. We definitely take June as a break. It's festival season. So we meet every month, and some of the work we continue is how to, I would say there's levels of conversations, higher philosophical of how we engage the community and how do we reach other committee members. But also there's times where we are working on projects that are more of an annual, you have kind of a cycle of things. Acceptance of people's choice, placement of people's choice, and like with Salina Downtown, going through that call and that review of those things becomes an annual process. So there's always things that, like we have an annual cycle of responsibilities, but sometimes there's just new stuff that comes to us. And I think it's nice that we have the opportunity to kind of have a elevated conversation about our cultural engagement, our visual arts engagement around the city. Big conversations about accessibility and where we're putting work, and how are people accessing that work? How do they know about it other than the signage? And these are things that when I first started, we went ahead and did a survey just to gauge how people were activating the public art. Were they looking at the murals and kind of what the frequency is, and just trying to figure out where people were at so we know where we can go with that sort of stuff. So yeah, like I said, annual task and decisions that we will continue to make based on some of these programs we're already engaged in, and always seeing where we can expand and take it.
And we should mention that all of these meetings are open to the public.
Yes.
And you can find the meeting agendas and the minutes on the city's website, which is salina-ks.gov. And so that's all public information that you can access and read, and we invite you to show up to some meetings just as an observer to see what the Community Art and Design Committee does.
Yeah, and we have a Facebook page, the CAD page, so there's, we post on there, so feel free to join that. And we're always, every year we go through a cycle of either re-upping membership, so if there's an expression of interest, that can be found on the city website also.
Okay, yeah, very important for people of all socioeconomic origins to come together on committees like this and do this important work. So is there anything else we need to know about the Community Art and Design program today?
I don't know. I just want to encourage people to get out. I think this committee has got some really lovely connections with our Parks Department, and we work so closely as we're standing here today in Oxbow Park. We've got our sculpture behind us, but we also have some new playground equipment. So there's just really close connections and conversations happening that are creating this opportunity. So.
Another great resource is the Arts and Humanities website at salinaarts.com, and if you just click on public art, you'll go to a page where there's a map that shows you where all the public art is in Salina, which is really handy.
Yeah, so you can go to that map and click on it and find the location in the description and find a little bit more. Signage will tell you the artist and the year typically, but that website helps you kind of dig in a little bit deeper.
You could probably spend half the day just going around town looking at all the various art.
It may be days, actually.
Maybe.
Like we've got quite a collection. So, yeah.
Well, great. Well, we certainly invite you to do that. Please come to the Community Art and Design Committee meetings and just appreciate what we have around us. Not every town has this kind of level of art in its community. So
it's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Crystal, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks to you, Dave.
And we'll see you next time on Salina A&E.